Well, hello students. Welcome to week 1 of GENE150. Welcome to the course itself. I hope this video is framed somewhat helpfully so you can see me and see what we're doing. I'm going to try to post a video introduction to each week. Some of them will be longer than others. Some of them will be very brief. My goal is to not recreate a lecture experience right here at the beginning. There's other things for you to do. There's other things for you to watch each week, but my goal is to just introduce the topics to you and provide you with a little bit of what you'd also get in the classroom. I've taught this course in a number of venues, in the classroom, online, in a hybrid version that Regent does. So I'm going to try to fit as much in as possible in this very brief 8-week context. And that should lead to the very first point. It's only 8 weeks. That's not long. Don't get behind. These assignments, they build quickly. To miss 1 week and then have all those assignments hanging over your head while you're doing the next week can be very daunting. And I've seen students get 2 or 3 weeks behind, and sometimes there's no recovery. So do your best to stay with the pace of this course. I should introduce myself. My name is Ken Christian, as hopefully you've seen on the Blackboard page through emails that I sent you already. You might see me every once in a while as David Christian. That's my actual first name. I go by Ken though. Hopefully that's what you'll see from me in most contexts, or Professor Christian. You don't actually address me in this online version, so it doesn't really matter. But again, I'm Ken Christian. I'm not a full-time professor. I'm adjunct, but I've taught a variety of courses for Regent, this probably being maybe close to the 10th course that I've taught, and I've enjoyed doing it. And I love this course in particular, the good, the true, and the beautiful. The true, the good, and the beautiful. It's a fantastic course. I know you'll benefit from it. Hopefully, you've had a chance to go download the syllabus. I want to start there, walk you through some key things in reference to the syllabus. You can see, if you've got it in front of you, hopefully you do, some contact information that I put on there for myself. There's my phone number. You can text me at that at any time. Just include your name, include the course, and so I know who I'm talking to, but feel free to text me at any time. There's an email address too. I check my email all the time. It's always up. I can respond quickly unless I'm out of town. If you'll notice on that second green paragraph there on page 1 of your syllabus, I am a full-time minister. That's my day job. And so on weekends, particularly like Saturday afternoon till about late Sunday or even Monday, I'm very, very swamped. So if you need to talk with me immediately about an assignment, especially one that's due on a particular weekend, do not wait until Saturday to try to contact me. Try to get me earlier in the week, as I just can't guarantee you I'll be able to help you if you talk to me late Saturday or certainly early Sunday. Nothing's going to come your way, maybe not until the beginning of the next work week. Just wanted to let you know about that. Note as you go down the course description there on page 1, this course is an introduction to the enduring questions of truth, goodness, and beauty through theological and philosophical investigation, including biblical apologetics and critical thinking. One of my goals in this course, and one of my goals in these opening introductory lectures, if you will, is to help you see that only within a worldview defined by the truths of Scripture itself do the concepts of truth, goodness, and beauty even make sense. Only a biblical worldview, a biblical view of life that's shaped by the truth of Scripture, that uses kind of the Scripture as a lens through which everything else is processed. Only that kind of view of the world even leads us to a world where truth, beauty, and goodness could possibly exist in any objective or definable way. And that is something we're going to emphasize in this course, that truth is objective. Goodness is objective, meaning they're not subjective, defined by one's personal opinions or situations. There are certain things that are always true, all the time, for whoever says them, in whatever period in which they live. The same is true of goodness. Certain things are good all the time for everyone. And that, of course, means certain things are bad for all the time for everyone. It's not subjective on one's in relation to one's culture or time period or whatnot. Not all things. And we're also going to see, this is a little bit more challenging to see, but I'm convinced that it's true, that beauty itself is objective. Certain things are objectively beautiful, and certain things are not. And as a Christian especially, it's our job to learn to recognize that. And so again, all of those ideas, the objectivity of truth, goodness, and beauty are found in a scriptural worldview and nowhere else. But really, the ability to even talk about things like truth, goodness, and beauty in any rational way, in any non-contradictory way, is only found within a biblical worldview. We're going to hopefully see more of that as we go on, and you'll see more of that in your readings as well. Hopefully you have all the textbooks listed for you. I think they're on page 6 of your syllabus, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, there they are. There's the Connected Living in Light of the Trinity by Albury. There's Glittering Vices by De Young. Truth Decay by Grotius, and of course the scriptures as well. Hopefully you've had a chance to get those. There are instructions all over your student helps on the websites and on Blackboard for how to acquire those texts. The readings that you'll have for this week are already provided for you in PDF form. You might have seen those already, but that won't be the case for weeks 2 and following. So make sure you have these texts. Again, they're on page 6 of your syllabus. Let me know if you need help getting them. Speaking of getting started, for each week, what you'll do is you'll navigate to Blackboard, our courses Blackboard page, and you'll click course content. And then for each week, which is each unit, there are 8 units, 8 weeks, you'll see a heading, and you click on Unit 1. And once you click on Unit 1, it'll take you to an overview for the week, an introduction that's particular to this week that you're supposed to fill out, the readings that you're supposed to read, they're all right there and listed for you. And then there are assignments, which usually assignments include things like quizzes, and there are reading quizzes as you go on. But for the first 2 weeks of the course, there are no reading quizzes. I wanted you to be aware of that. I sent you an email about that the other day. But for week 1, there is a syllabus quiz due. That's, again, found under the assignment section of week 1 under course content. You'll also see, for most weeks, a dialogue. Now, the dialogues are online bulletin board discussions or online forum discussions where you'll make a post and others will comment on it and you will comment on theirs. I want to go ahead and describe how those work. Go ahead and go to, on your syllabus, the page where the schedule overview begins, starting on page 9. This is really a great way to see what's expected of you each week. All of the readings are listed. The videos you're supposed to view are listed. There are your group discussion or your forums, or again, they're called dialogues on Blackboard. They're listed for you as well. And when each week has a dialogue, you'll see that you have, and this is very clearly explained on Blackboard under Unit 1 dialogue, that you have an initial post, and that's due on the Wednesday of the week. That would be for this first week, June 26th. And then your response post is due, I think I just realized that this is incorrect. Please forgive me. Let me just make sure that this is correct. This has gone on too long for me to redo this video. Hold on a second. Your response posts are due on Wednesday, and your quizzes are due on the I'm sorry. So, okay, let's walk through this again. You can see it very clearly. Unit 1, your first initial post is due by the end of Wednesday, June 26th, and then your one response post is due by the end of Saturday, June 29th. And that pattern, Wednesday, Saturday, will proceed throughout each unit. Hopefully that's clear. If you have any questions, let me know. But for this week, for example, Unit 1 dialogue, hopefully you can see it on Blackboard. You are asked to define in your initial post terms like modernity and postmodernity. And you're to formulate a biblical response to each of those movements. And then you're instructed on how to do that even further. You're going to read about modernity and postmodernity, and you're to write an initial post on those topics, and you'll see the specifics there on the dialogue. Then, by Saturday, what you're to do is to construct a response to one of your fellow students' posts. you've all been assigned into groups, and you will respond to people within your own group. That will become obvious as you click on dialogue from your end of Blackboard and start this assignment. You'll go be taken to the group, and you'll create a new post for your initial post, and then you'll reply to one of your other fellow group members' posts by Saturday. And the instructions on what to say in that reply post are there as well. Again, this is all under course content. Week 1, you go down to dialogues and Unit 1 dialogue, and this is laid out. And the due dates, again, are there on your syllabus as well. We're going to talk about postmodernism and modernism in just a second in this video so that you can have a feel for what that is. Again, some weeks there are quizzes on your readings, not this one, just a syllabus quiz to make sure you've gone over the syllabus. But starting in week 3, there'll be quizzes on your readings as well as these dialogue assignments, which continue throughout. Again, pay close attention to your course schedule that's there starting on page 9 on your syllabus. I want to also tell you about something else that's important. At the end of the course, you have a final paper due. Your final paper is on one of the 7 capital vices that you'll read about in the Glittering Vices book, or the 7 deadly sins, as they're sometimes referred to. That is due the last day of the course. There's a description of it on Blackboard of the assignment itself. If you go to, again, on that major sideboard, you go to Course Resources, and you'll see the essay grading rubric, and on that you will be able to download a description of the assignment as well. That is very, very important. This assignment on the vices makes up a significant portion of your grade, so do make sure you read about that and how it'll be graded as well. For the actual assignment itself, you go to course content. They've moved things around on me here on Blackboard. Week 8, Unit 8, and you'll see it listed under assignments. It's called Unit 8 Essay. And again, this is a very large assignment, and it's something you want to get started on early. You'll actually be turning in a topic for me. I believe it's next week. Again, it's on one of the 7 capital vices that's discussed in the Glittering Vices book that you'll read about. Only choose one, and choose one of the ones that's actually in the book. And then you'll write a paper as described here under course content, week 8, unit 8 essay. You'll be able to see just what you're supposed to do. So don't wait to get started on that. And then also, as we move through the course, for example, let's see, I think they begin in week 3, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, in week 3, you have an additional assignment called an op-ed. I believe it's one of 2 throughout. Let me just check. I didn't create this course, so sometimes the assignments do change. I just want to make sure. Looks like you have 3 op-eds. Again, each op-ed is described clearly in that week's section under course content, so you'd go to Unit 3, and it would be under assignments there, and Unit 3 would be the op-ed, telling you just what to do. It's a little bit more of a formal paper than your discussions, so please write it as a paper that contains a thesis and supporting statements, and use proper formatting and all of those things. I grade heavily on grammar, particularly for op-eds like that, so make sure you use proper sentence structure, proper grammar, and so on. That's important. Those are due on the final day of each unit in which they're assigned. So that's Sunday for all of your units. Those op-eds are due on the Sunday of that week. Remember, you'd have your initial post on Wednesday of the dialogue, and then your comment post to one of your students on Saturday for those dialogues. But on the week where you also have an op-ed, that particular op-ed is due on the final day of each week, which is a Sunday, as our course is structured, as you can see. Let me quickly return to the discussion about the essay. The final essay is due on the last day of class, but the last day of class on that last week is not a Sunday, it's a Saturday, August 17th. That last paper is due, as are all assignments, by August 17th, any outstanding assignment. I am not allowed to take work after that date. August 17th, remember, that's a Saturday. That's when your final essay on one of the 7 capital vices is due. So be paying attention to that as well. If you have any more questions about how to navigate Blackboard, if anything I've said about assignments is unclear, shoot me questions. Things will become clearer throughout as we continue to work our way through this course and the Blackboard content that's there. Really follow along with your syllabus in the course schedule starting on page 9, showing you what's doing when, and track that along with each week's section under course content just to make sure you're hitting everything, and you'll be fine. Okay. I want to talk real quickly about modernism and postmodernism. It's something you're going to be writing about and reading about this week, particularly in the Grotius text. And I want to be sure you just have a general introduction to it. But let me begin really by talking about a basic human reality, a human reality that's present for us in Romans chapter 1, verses 20 through 23. Romans chapter 1, verses 20 through 23. If you want to turn there now, pause the video for a sec. But that passage tells us, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes, his eternal power, and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse, that is, all of us. For even though they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks, but they became futile in their speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible man and of birds, and of four-footed animals and crawling creatures. I'll stop there. But according to that passage I just read, there really are no such thing as people who don't believe in God. According to the Bible, there's no such thing as an atheist. I mean, not from God's perspective. What exists are people who see evidence of God all around them. But left to ourselves, Romans 1 makes clear, we naturally reject the evidence of God that we see. And so some principles to take away from this particular passage, Romans 1, 20 through 23, that will kind of guide you even through the rest of the course. It's just basically these general descriptions of every person's natural instinct, again, left to themselves. Everybody sees evidence of a creator when we look around at the world around us. Now, not enough to bring us to salvation, that's what the Bible's for, but enough to know enough for us all to know as we look at the stars, the trees, nature, as we look at our own bodies, we realize we've been made by an all-powerful, authoritative creator. The problem with that is unbelievers, from the beginning of that realization until the present, willfully reject that crystal clear evidence for God that's all around us. And then these same people who, again, left to themselves, reject the evidence of a creator in their lives, they exchange, Romans 1 tells us, the truth of God's existence for some other foolish interpretation of the world around us, an interpretation that explains what all of this is and how I should evaluate it. Such interpretations took the form of ancient paganism in older days. In modern times, it takes the form of Darwinian evolution, this belief that everything's here by chance, just a system of random processes. Postmodern skepticism is another lie that's exchanged in for the truth of who this world belongs to and who put us here. And this exchange goes on. These foolish interpretations are brought in all the while people are ignoring the God they know already is there. And again, those principles form a large part of discussions that we will have on video and the things you'll write about, and I'll write back to you throughout this course. Speaking of discussions, though, this week, you're going to need to write a paper on modernism and postmodernism. And I wanted to introduce you to those topics, but with that Romans 1 passage in the back of your mind. First, modernism. Modernism, or the modernist age, began in the late 1600s. That's just after the Protestant Reformation. It kind of took place during mid to post-Renaissance times. The modernist age, or the modernist movement, is synonymous with what you might have heard referred to as the Enlightenment. There's a quote in the Grotius book that is just a fantastic definition of modernism. You'll run across it. I'll read it for you real quickly. Grotius wrote, "The goal of the Enlightenment was to free humanity from superstition and found a philosophy and civilization on rational inquiry, empirical evidence, and scientific discovery. The modernist vision presupposed the power of rationality, human rationality, to discover objective truth. They, that is modernists, desired a rational scientific worldview over the perceived irrationality and acrimony stemming from religion, and the possibility of progress through humanity's emancipation from received dogma and superstition. Note, the modernists wanted to be freed from what they viewed as the superstitions of religion. Anybody hearing a bit of Romans 1 already? They were exchanging the truth of a God they know is there for something else. And the key phrase to remember about the modernist movement is that they believed in the power of rationality to discover objective truth. I said believed. There are still many, many people today who are pure modernists. They still believe in the power of human rationality to discover objective truth on its own. Objective meaning that something's true for everybody. The modernists believe that there is objective truth about reality, that there's objective truth about ethics, there's objective truth about logic, and so on. And again, that they believed it was within the power of human rationality alone to discover this objective truth through observation and sense experience. And for some, this included the scientific method, which you might have heard in other courses. See, prior to the modernist revolution, prior to the Enlightenment, objective truth was always first founded in God and in God's revelation, the scriptures. But modernists rejected the idea of divine revelation. And what they did was substitute human rationality as the basis for discovering truth. And that was the modernist battle cry, removing the need for divine revelation about the world and seeking truth through only the power of our own self-discovery and rationality. That's the essence of modernism. I hope that makes sense. At the end of the day, what the modernists decided and what they still cling to is that the universe is all that exists. It's all that ever has existed, and it's all that will exist. Some modernists have liked to say that matter, the stuff that everything's made of, matter is all there is. Modernists believe that the universe is a closed system, that there's nothing or no one outside of it. And what they believe is eventually matter arose from random processes and has been arranged by random processes ever since, leading to us after a long process of our planet cooling and then billions of years of evolution leading to you and I talking today. Again, with no purpose, with no designer, just pure random processes and chance. Now, after that, another movement arose. This movement was known as postmodernism, and it really got going in the mid to late 20th century. The postmoderns, what they began to see was some of the inherent limitations of modernism. For example, they would say, if the universe is just all random chance, and thus just random matter in random motion, well then the postmoderns said then what is human rationality then? Other than just the impulses of a brain, that's nothing more than random matter in random motion too. The postmoderns begin to ask questions like, how is a brain really different than a mud puddle? We don't walk around assuming that a mud puddle is having any kind of true rationality. So why would we assume our brains, which are just as random, just as purposeless, just as accidental, why would we assume there's anything really resembling rationality within just this lump of flesh that exists in our skull? Thus they would ask, how could random human rationality, that's just a part of the random processes of the universe, how could we ever be certain we've arrived at true objective knowledge about anything? And with that, they'd also say, how could we be sure, again, in a random universe where everything is random, including us, how could we assume that even our sense experience, the signals that our nerves send us through our fingers, through our eyes, and through our nose, and so on, why would we assume, again, if everything's random, which according to the modernists it was, well, the postmoderns would say, well, how could we assume that our random sense experience and the random impulses they send our brain actually represent anything that's truly going on without us? It could all just be a giant hallucination, a giant dream mixed up inside the chemicals of this thing we have bouncing around in our skull. And how would we know? Hopefully you've understood those questions. The postmoderns saw the limits of the modernist movement. That if the universe is just a random process when it's all said and done, then so is human rationality. and so is sense experience, and thus none can really be trusted to have arrived at anything objectively true. But rather than look for something then that did provide a basis for objective knowledge, something like divine revelation, for example, the postmodernists, what they did was they rejected the idea of objectivity altogether. What they argued was that all claims to truth by anyone in any field are really just representations of the biases of that particular person. What you hear when somebody says this is true is not anything actually describing objective truth. There is no such thing of that, but just the person's opinions about what's supposedly true for him. They also went on to say that at the end of the day, all truth claims, both historically and present, are really just attempts of groups with power to keep in control those under them who don't have as much power as they. And thus all claims to truth, absolute truth, are nothing more than power plays. That's what the postmoderns believed. And so all of that kind of coalesced into a sort of philosophy which says essentially there's no such thing as absolute truth about anything. There's no such thing about absolute truth about the world as it really is, or how people should live in this world. There's no absolute truth about ethics. And what that led to was just radical skepticism, we can't know anything, and moral relativism. Anything goes. Do what you feel. We can't know anything, so just do what you want. Far from being a correction to modernism, postmodernism was just a step further, it was further down the slide into foolishness that Romans 1 already talked about. Because both postmodernism and modernism reject divine revelation as a source of objective truth. Modernism ends up in a universe where things like human reason and human observation can't really be trusted as reliable. See, by rejecting a biblical worldview, the modernists ultimately removed any reason they had to trust their reason and sense experience. They wished so hardly that one could find objective truth without God, just in a random, accidental universe. The problem with that is our rationality in a universe like that, our sense experience in a universe like that becomes just as random, just as accidental, and thus doesn't really give us the truth that modernism was looking for. Again, that's only found in a worldview based on divine revelation. Postmodernism just took that all one step further. And it ended up in a world without any objective truth and made it impossible to say anything about anything. Except, of course, the statements of postmodernism. You know, the postmodernists made absolute truth claims by saying there are no such thing as absolute truth. But that's a self-contradictory statement, because that statement itself is a statement of absolute truth. I hope you see that. To say there is no absolute truth is to state a truth that you believe to be true, absolutely. And those statements, which are a marvel of contradiction, they're meant to provide us with something, but really there's nothing to support them. Both of these worldviews, modernism and postmodernism, ended up being something like a person sitting on a tree limb but sawing off the limb he was sitting on. Eventually, the limb gives way and there's nothing underneath. You either end up with just a universe where you can't know anything, or an eternal contradiction where you know you can't know anything, both of which are absurd. Professing to be wise, Romans 1 says, they became fools. Hopefully, that's enough for you to go on. Grotius is going to explain this far more clearly than I just did. Enjoy week number 1. Reach out to me at any time via text or email. If you have any questions, follow your syllabus to the letter. Do the assignments just as described. Don't leave anything out of your dialogues or op-eds later. If it says to talk about this, talk about that. Make sure you cover it all. Don't worry if you go over the word limit. That never bothers me at all. I'll give you more feedback as we go on. Talk to you soon. God bless.